These are the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM.
And you're with Chat City on Preston FM, and it's lovely to welcome my first guest actually into the studio this morning, and it's Cllr Margaret Smith, and Margaret is leader of South Ribble Borough Councils. So Margaret, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
And welcome to Chat City. Now, Margaret has made a lifelong commitment to the Conservative Party and served in a number of positions in her political career. One of the most outstanding Conservative local government leaders in the North West, well known for her attention to detail and determination to demand the highest standards on behalf of South Ribble residents. So what a lovely introduction. And how difficult is it to have that eye on detail as a politician?
It's not easy, I have to say, but I suppose as you go on, you get used to trying to cross all the I's, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. But the more you look into it and look into things, the better you understand what is actually going on in the community, what's going on within our own council. And we're a relatively small council compared with such a lot of other the unitaries particularly, and some districts. So therefore you do get to know your staff a lot better, and they communicate with you, and you get to know bits and pieces that possibly otherwise you wouldn't pick up on. So I think that's helpful as well.
And does that also apply to constituents and people living in the borough?
Well, we always say where I represent, which is New Longton and Hutton East, which takes in the police headquarters. So that's the sort of area where I represent, along with my husband, who also is a councillor for the same ward. There are people who are well able to look after themselves, but and don't bother you unless they really have a problem. As soon as there's a problem, we know about it. It's like the Bush Telegraph; it goes round with incredible speed around the village. So they know where we are to call on us, and we do our very best to help them. It was last Monday morning, I think I had about 5 phone calls about the same thing out of a little avenue that's got about 20 houses in it, and texts and emails and things. And what we normally do is, I said to one lady, we'll just get your residents together, we'll come, we'll have a meeting in your house, we'll sit down, we'll talk through the problem, see how we can solve it to everybody's satisfaction. That's the main thing, trying to make sure that everybody has at least got some input into it, and they can feel that even the ones that are upsetting the residents can feel they can explain their point of view and see if we can, as I say, resolve it amicably. And
that must be a nice way, though, of being able to do it. It's certainly a kind of democratic way, isn't it, to get people to be able to come together and hopefully negotiate and maybe mediate onto a resolution. Well,
there's nothing worse than the turf war down a
yes.
small avenue.
Yes.
And one of the things that you find is a particular issue where we represent is that obviously we're a very rural area. And there's planning applications in areas that people have always seen as open and obviously don't wish them to be built on. Boundaries are another one, hedges, all these sort of things that are very, very difficult to resolve. So it's easier if you can get everybody sitting around the table and trying to talk it through, because as you know, boundaries lines are not the easiest to define.
Yes, and of course to that person themselves, at that point, the most important thing probably on their mind, so it can be quite difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, when you say that although South Ribble is maybe compared with the other authorities quite small, I was actually quite surprised when I was looking. It's actually very spread out, isn't it, in quite a rural area.
I think it's 44 square miles.
Wow, so it does cover.
And I always compare it to the shape of a rugby ball. It's a bit wider in the middle and sort of pointed at the ends.
Yeah.
But it goes from our boundary with Blackburn and Darwen, Ribble Valley, Chorley, West Lancs, Preston. So we've got boundaries all around us of varying districts or unitaries, but it goes from Salisbury, taking in obviously British Aerospace up there, right over to Banks, just on the border there, Taunton. We just break off at Taunton.
And I was really quite surprised, how wide the area is. So when did we? I was just saying that you've been a lifelong commitment to the Conservative Party. So when did politics first kind of feature in your life? Was it through school? Was it from family? Can you remember when, your first kind of thought was of some kind of injustice and you wanted to have some part in maybe making it right?
I wouldn't say it was an injustice as such. My mother was on Preston Council, and she joined, and she started her leafleting and campaigning on a housing estate in Ashton called Larches. And I got involved in all the leafleting that went on, and Mum then joined the council and thoroughly enjoyed it. She really had a good time, and she met lots of nice people and good friends from all parties. You do. That's part of, particularly in South Ribble, we feel that we're lucky that we actually do get on with our opposition, if that's what you'd like to call it. And I think it came from there. It started from there, and obviously later on, a few years later, I married and had my children, and then sort of started getting interested just in local politics on the basis, I know this is going to sound a bit strange, but I was very involved at one time with the Leonard Cheshire Home at Garstein, and doing a lot of fundraising for Oaklands. And people used to look at me and you could almost see them veering away because she was obviously coming with some raffle tickets, or she was selling something or wanting to get people involved in something. And I enjoyed doing that. But I did feel that I got to the stage where I would like to do something without actually necessarily selling raffle tickets all the time. So I sort of veered into politics on that basis. I think that wanting to know what was going on in my community, I always said I'm basically nosy. So therefore, that was a good start, wanting to get involved, wanting to know what's going on. And as I say, you do meet a lot of interesting people.
Yes, sure. And
from all walks of life and all politics.
And a lifelong Conservative. So what was it about the Conservative Party and the Conservative politics that attracted you?
My mother and father, I suppose you'd say, came from very humble beginnings, as I have, but were always very committed to working hard and getting on in life. And they became self-employed, ran their own business, but at the same time had that caring way of going about helping people. As I say, Mum ran her business on Larches Estate, where obviously people did need help and advice. But at the same time, she wanted to know that she could help. But at the same time, she had this drive and ambition to better herself, I suppose. And I think it was from that, really. I took my inspiration from both my mother and my father. They were very committed people to the community and to their way of life.
And what about being female within a political world? In the House of Commons at the moment, I mean, last week there was the big debate between, of course, all the parties about the lack of female representation within politics, and particularly at the moment within the House of Commons. Has that ever been an issue for yourself in politics, and your own feelings on the fact that there are or seem to be so little participation or entry into the political field from female?
It's never been an issue for me. My working life was in the motor industry, which is, as you probably know, very much male-dominated. And I had a position of being in charge over quite a number of my male colleagues, so that didn't present a problem to me. I've never found it difficult being a female leader, because the group that I represent, while we do have a number of women alongside myself, we are predominantly male dominated. But I find that if you treat everybody more or less, and I say more or less because you can't treat everybody just the same, but everybody can have their say and work towards what they wish to see out of a particular issue, I think you don't have a problem. I think it is difficult in other walks of life, and I think it is difficult as regards politics and getting women to enter politics. And I know we sometimes do struggle to get people involved. A lot of women seem to be very happy to be fundraisers, leafleters, as we used to do, stuffing envelopes, all these sort of things. But actually getting into the front line, we do sometimes struggle to get people to commit to that.
How do you think we could probably encourage more females to become involved, and young people per se into politics? I'm sure that is an ambition that you would like to see, and particularly when it comes to local politics.
I think I see one of the difficulties of getting young people, say, for instance, to get involved in local politics. I look at my own family and I look at my grandchildren, and they're involved in such a lot out of school. Consequently, that means that the parents are constantly moving them around, doing things with them, and therefore the commitment to family life, which is good, means that they are constrained in other areas. And I think it's until they move on and probably get to university that people start to take a bit more of an interest in, because they've got a bit more free time, I suppose. So it is difficult getting the young people to commit into things. As regards getting women involved, I think that is, as I say, very difficult. I know loads of, obviously, people who were happy to stay on the fringe, but will not commit to getting involved. And I don't know how I don't have the answer to that. I think probably if I had, I'd be okay.
And travelling the politician route to where you are today, what about any politicians, any MPs, etc., that you've admired along the way?
Well, I suppose I must say my namesake, Margaret Thatcher. I did admire her very much indeed. I thought she was a very committed person to what she saw was the way forward. I think, like a lot of people, when you look at history, not every decision that she took was right, and that would be to be expected. But I think she was certainly, to me, the person right for that moment in time. As I suppose you would say Winston Churchill was the right person for that moment in time. So she's the one person I would say that I would, put down on my list of people I admire.
And being leader of South Ribble Borough Council, what have been the challenges there?
I think probably the biggest challenge, as I'm sure that you will get from all leaders who come into your studio, is balancing the books, basically.
Yes.
We've been in charge of South Ribble since 2007. And certainly we were not in a particularly good place at that time. We have worked very, very hard to balance the books. We knew the reductions were coming in our grant from government. They've been reducing every year over the past 7 years, and before that as well, to a degree. But a lot of the ring fence grants have now gone and disappeared, and it's a case of moving forward and knowing that you've got that challenge, and it is a challenge to make sure that we give our best service we can to our residents, keeping the council tax again. We won't be putting our council tax up. That's the 4th year in a row. But somewhere along the line, we have to make sure that we can afford to do that. But we have, as I say, worked hard knowing it's coming, and been preparing for it. And we do feel at this moment in time that we are in a good place. We're very optimistic of how we can cope with what is on offer. We're optimistic about what is going on in our borough. We have had a tremendous amount of investment in the borough from big multinational companies. And that has brought in a lot of work for our residents. Our unemployment statistic now is 1.6, which is almost on, when you actually talk to experts, that's almost full employment, because there's always a residue of people, obviously, that are out of work. And we have more things coming online. Therefore, we feel that moving forward, we are up to the challenge. We can get through it, and make sure our residents still get the best service we can give them.
Yes, and I'm sure residents, as you say, that the fact that the council tax frozen again, and this is the 5th year. And I was going to ask about that, because South Ribble is one of the UK's development hotspots. I mean, as you say, just had a big company moving in. What else would you like to see in the way of development within the borough?
Well, I think one of our main priorities at the moment is getting further investment within the borough. We have a big site, which is Cllr, which is right on the motorway junctions there. That has been ripe for development for, well, I can't remember how long time, because it came with the Central Lancashire New Town. That's now moving forward, but that will be a huge development within our borough. They reckon it's one of the best sites in Lancashire, if not in the country. That's right in the centre of our borough. That will bring a lot of jobs, but on the back of that, it will bring people money that will invest within the borough, spend it in the borough, live in the borough. That's what we want to see, not people working in the borough, moving out. I know that isn't always possible, that people have to move between areas, but in the main we would like to see a lot more people living within our borough and spending their hard-earned cash within it.
Yes, I can
to boost the economy along.
One of the schemes that amongst many that I was reading about is aimed at getting empty properties back into use, which these days is so topical, is so needed. Again, what would be the area within South Ribble, or what would you like to see, though, when it's looking at empty properties?
It's a new policy that we put in. We put it in last October, that we thought that not only do we want new build, but there are a lot of properties around that, for whatever reason, remain empty for long periods of time. I saw a piece in the paper a couple of weeks ago, and there's a small lane in Leyland called Fox Lane. It's a conservation area, and there's some almshouses there at Oswald Deston Trust. And I'd forgotten about this, but South Ribble gave that trust £50,000 about, I think it must have been about 2 or 3 years ago, to help them bring back 2 empty properties. And with a loan and our investment, they are just complete now. So all those properties down there have all come back into occupation. That's a really good, to me, result from investment. The properties primarily we're targeting at the moment are ones that have been empty for a number of years, for whatever reason, as I say. Some are family circumstances, some people are living abroad. But when they deteriorate, it doesn't help the people, in some cases, that are attached to them, as in if it's a semi. So the deterioration then has a knock-on effect. That's not good for the neighbours, it's not good for the area, it's not good for where people live in the environment there. So we will be targeting those, but they will be all assessed one by one, and the criteria will have to be met before we will actually intervene. What we want to do is encourage the homeowners to actually get into dialogue with us, and let's see if we can get them back into habitable state, and then hopefully we won't have to go down a more different route that would actually be more expensive to them and us, and make things a lot more drawn out.
Right, yes, I can understand that. This morning I was listening to the Today programme. I do occasionally listen to other radio stations, not often, but on the Today programme they were discussing how to bring businesses and people back into the locality to business, so that they don't go shopping out of town and they don't go to out of town supermarkets. And a lot of the experts who they were talking to said that one of the biggest issues around people not shopping locally, going to businesses locally, is car parking charges. What's the issues that you face in South Ribble when it comes to car parking charges?
Car parking charges. To park for 2 hours in the centre of Leyland is 50p. We also have a number of 1 hour slots where you pay nothing. So if you're parking in the bay with the blue lines, you don't pay anything. You can stay there for an hour. I don't think 50p is particularly expensive to park for 2 or more hours. We also have parking along Huff Lane. So you're right in the centre there of Huff Lane, and you can park for free for I don't know, it's half an hour now, or something like that. We have parking behind the shops at Lostock Hall, also free parking there. There's parking behind the shops in Penwortham and in Bamber Bridge. I think we're doing as much as we can to encourage people to actually come locally. Before Christmas, we suspended all car parking charges to help the shopkeepers over the Christmas period. We've done that for a few years now. We think that's helpful to them. They appreciate it. The shopkeepers appreciate it. We're trying our hardest to actually put a better environment within our shopping areas. We have done some work on Huff Lane. We need to do more. We have done work at Lostock Hall. The next one to be done will be Longton, and that is on the cards for doing quite soon now. And then we'll be in the budget we have put in for Penwortham and Bamber Bridge. So we are looking at all our shopping areas to try to encourage people to have a better experience when they go shopping. And while still having somewhere to park. Yes,
definitely I can understand that. And one of the causes that I know you were pleased to see to begin to be redeveloped, of course, was the railway station.
Indeed. Could I just add something further to that about the shops?
Yes, certainly, of course.
One of the other things that is also sometimes a detriment to people that are actually... is the rates. But the government have actually brought in a new scheme that if your property rateable value is under £50,000, you can actually get £1,000 off your rates. You have to apply, but once you apply and you meet the criteria, you actually get £1,000 off your rate. Now, to me, that is something that is worth applying for, because... that's one of the big things. The rents and the rates are the big things with shops, that they find it very difficult sometimes if the footfall's not coming through. So if they can have that benefit, they should, look into it. And we're going to publicise it when we send out the rates in March.
So that's now. People can now apply.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
okay.
it's a good thing to, if we can promote that.
Yes,
I think it will be a good thing.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
Railway. Leyland Station, yes, Leyland Station. Right. Leyland Station has 4 platforms. The 2 that are actually used as the domestic platforms, if you will, are the centre platforms. They cannot be accessed apart from by stairs. This is very difficult for people who have mobility problems, who have... prams, bikes, all these sort of things. So you sometimes have a situation where someone has to go to Preston because you can get onto the outer platform from a level area. To go to Preston, to have to come back to again. Get on the inner platform. So I have been talking to Network Rail and Northern Rail and Lancashire County Council over a number of years to look to improve the platform and access to it. We have had some success. We've had a new booking office is actually being built at this moment as we speak and should be ready by the end of the month. We've had some real-time machines put in so you can tell the time of the rail, the next train coming in. But the thing that we want the most is some lifts to those two centre platforms. I've had many meetings over a number of years now, and it must probably be 5 years, and I know that sounds a long time, but these things do move very slowly. But we have now got to the situation where Network Rail and Northern Rail have put in a bid for us, and we're their preferred station to be upgraded. That goes to the Department of Transport in April for funding. I've got my fingers crossed, my toes crossed, my eyes crossed, everything crossed, in the hope that we will actually get that. If we could, it would be such a fantastic result, really. But it's like a lot of things. You don't hold your breath, do you? Because everybody wants a slice of the action.
Yes.
But it seems very strange. But when some legislation was put in regarding railways, the Disabled Facilities Act doesn't actually apply.
No?
Nope.
Wow, that seems...
it's bizarre.
It is.
It is bizarre, but it was deliberately not put in because there are...
Of the costing?
It's the cost, and there's a lot of stations that are in a similar position.
Yes.
So I think Kirkham's another one that is similar to ours.
Right, well, can I thank you for coming in to Chat City this morning? It's been a pleasure meeting, and hopefully we can meet again not too distant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our podcasts. But don't forget, Chat City is live weekdays from 10 till noon on 103.2 Preston FM.